Welcome everyone. I am absolutely thrilled to celebrate Ethex's 10-year anniversary.
Great.
Thank you very much. It has been a long time coming, and when I was talking to Bob, my other half, this morning, and I was stressing about it a little bit, he did remind me that it's supposed to be a celebration, so let's treat it as such, just coming together and having some nice people in the room together and having a really good chat. I have got some great people with me today who I'm going to introduce, but first of all, as my other half is American as well, let's go American. And so, who in the room, you've got to give me a is a team member? Come on. Thank you. Who in the crowd is an investor? Thank you very much. Who in the crowd is from one of our social enterprises or communities that has raised finance? Yes. Brilliant. And we've got several people who are actually on the platform at the moment as well, so you can talk to them afterwards. Always an opportunity to find out more information. Anyone else from our former team? We're all still part of the same alumni. And we've got Jamie, who was the original founder. So, well done, everyone. Nice to have you all here. Good. So, proceedings today. Hopefully you've all got a drink, which is excellent. Just to introduce myself, if you don't know me, I'm Lisa Ashford. I'm the CEO of Ethex, and welcome today to our esteemed guests. I have, to my right, Erinch Sahan, who is Business and Enterprise Lead for Doughnut Economics, the Action Lab. Thank you very much for joining. We've got Hugh Davies, who is the Chair of Ethex, long-standing member of the board. Thank you very much for joining. And we've got Newman, who is writer, podcaster, and a MoneyMovers Ambassador. So rather than a boring old format, I think we're going to try something a little bit different today. Hopefully you'll find it interesting. I'm looking forward to it, so that's good. So what we're going to do is we're going to kick off with Emma. So if I can just pass over to her.
Thank you. Please forgive me if I seem rather nervous. I'm an author, and my day job usually involves me sitting by myself all day, imagining things, staring into space with nobody else there, and then occasionally typing frantically. So standing in front of so many people is actually quite terrifying and very unusual for me. Specifically, I'm a science fiction author. I dabble in other genres, and even more specifically than that, I am a recovering dystopian fiction author. I never set out to write dystopian fiction. It's just that when you're the sort of person who likes realism in their science fiction, and you logically extrapolate what the world will be like 80 years in the future based on where we are now, it's really easy to imagine something terrible. I'd argue we already live in a dystopian society. I just imagined it getting even worse, but with cooler tech. When I wrote The Planet Full Books, I wanted to grab readers by the shoulders and say, look at what you'll get if we don't do something about this now. But a couple of years ago, I started to wonder if that approach was really doing what I hoped it would. After all, the people reading my books don't have any control over the forces that shape the world. The people with the wealth and the influence to change things, who I would really love to shake by the shoulders, are sadly not the sort of people who necessarily read science fiction. And there was something else beneath this period of reflection as well. The realization that the eco-anxiety that had taken root when I was 12 years old and I first learned about acid rain and the ozone layer. Oh, those halcyon days. It's just been getting steadily worse ever since then. Seeing the messaging by climate scientists and activists designed to shake people by the shoulders and say, we need to do something now, otherwise look at what you'll get. Coupled with the woefully inadequate action by policymakers, was making me feel absolute despair about the future, along with so many other people. Because it's easy, right? It's easy to despair. Those messages of we need to do something now are correct. We can't just ignore them, but we also can't ignore the emotions that they elicit as well. When the media landscape is filled with terrible things happening around the world 24 hours a day, how else am I supposed to feel? But I knew that there had to be good things happening out there. So I went looking for them, not ignoring the horrors, but choosing to search for something hopeful amongst them. I looked for people doing amazing things right now, people who are striving to divert us away from the terrible future that looms before all of us. And like so many other things, the more I looked, the more I found. As well as being an author, I'm also a podcaster. And this journey inspired a podcast that I've created in partnership with Friends of the Earth called Imagining Tomorrow. And it's about shining a light on the communities and the companies doing all they can to create a better future for everyone. A year of research and interviews has gone into the first season. We've just had episode 4 go out. And aside from doing absolute wonders for my mental health, the communities and the innovators that I've spoken to have pretty much universally had one thing in common, other than the desire to make the world a better place. It's the need for funding. In a world driven by a financial machine that demands the highest profits possible, regardless of the damage that does, communities and small ethical businesses can struggle to find that funding. And of course, that's where Ethex comes into this. And people like you, people who are willing to invest in projects that you know will make the world a better place to live in. Projects like the Hook Norton Community Land Trust, raising money to build community-led, permanently affordable homes that are energy efficient. And that's a model that solves so many of the problems we see related to housing in this country, just in one project. It's amazing. Businesses like Soul Farm in Cornwall, yes, Cornwall, I'm Cornish, who have raised funds to ensure the continued success of their regenerative farming enterprise that feeds hundreds of local families. And the Solar for Schools project that aims to help UK schools decarbonise and save money by installing solar panels and educating pupils on the sustainable energy transition. I mean, all of these are just so obviously the way forwards, right? Something I've learned in the process of making the Imagining Tomorrow podcast is that these community groups and small businesses can take a tiny little bit of seed funding, and then they start something that doesn't just solve one problem. It starts a ripple effect. Money is generated and stays within communities. One successful project creates enough trust and confidence in themselves for these groups to start other projects too. Physical and mental health improves. The very fabric of society is repaired by these tiny little stitches all over the country. And to extend the metaphor, investment like that which you provide is giving them the needle and thread to do this. So I want to say thank you. Thank you to Ethex for facilitating this type of ethical investment. Thank you to the investors who choose to invest in projects that make things better instead of worse. Can you imagine what this country could be like if government policy made it more financially beneficial for people to invest in small ethical businesses and community groups than getting a buy-to-let mortgage and renting out houses? Can you imagine the wealth that could be generated and held in our communities instead of being sucked out by energy suppliers and international food chain corporations and banks? Now that's a future I'd much prefer to live in. And people like you are making it happen.
Thank you, Emma. I hope that set the scene for the rest of the evening and our future, which is fantastic. So I'd like to hand over to Erinch to give us his view of the doughnut economics, which this economic theory is hopefully helping to also transform society and the planet. And then I'll have a little talk afterwards about how we see ourselves fitting in amongst that. So over to you, Erinch.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay, I haven't written anything down. I don't have slides, but I brought this, which is going to guide us through the next couple of minutes to just intersect into basically what Emma has just brought us into. I mean, what you shared, Emma, is the centerpiece of the kinds of change that we're seeing happen around the world, the sort of hopeful, grassroots-led, innovative, new ideas that are emerging and people getting on and doing things. But let me sort of zoom out for a second. So my name is Erinch Sahan. I've worked in and around the social enterprise movement and the fair trade movement for about 15 years now. And I spent a lot of time trying to transform businesses, trying to influence companies, influence investments. And a few years ago, my path took me back to crossing over with an old colleague and friend, Kate Raworth, who wrote a book called Doughnut Economics, 7 Ways to Think Like a 21st Century Economist. And it was based on this diagram. Now, if you can see it, this diagram essentially has got 2 concentric circles. It's got an outer concentric circle, which is the planet's boundaries that Earth system scientists have told us we must not transgress, we must not overshoot. And it's got on the inside a social foundation that says we must meet the needs of everybody, the essential human needs that everybody has. And if you think of these 2 concentric circles as 2 boundaries, that our economy must not overshoot the ecological boundary on the outside, but nor fall short of the social foundation on the inside, you have a donut-shaped space, a green space between the 2 boundaries that becomes a safe and just space for humanity. It becomes a compass for our shared prosperity, for all life to thrive. And it becomes an alternative for how we think of economics, how we think of the world, and what we plan for. Suddenly, we're not just building economies that grow, whether or not they thrive, but instead growing economies that thrive rather than always grow. So you change the goals, you start to change the deep design of the economy. But the reason this relates to Ethex's story is we've spent the last 2.5 years working with businesses and business leaders of all types, of all businesses from all sizes, all kinds of sectors and around the world. So I've gone around the world for 2.5 years, basically doing workshops with small groups of business leaders, often CEOs or C-suite types that are struggling, that are saying to me, look, we know our business has to fundamentally transform, but we're held back. And time again, what they're held back from, whether it's a big company or a small enterprise or a family, medium-sized business, what they're held back by is their relationship with finance. Finance is demanding a particular return, a particular seat at the table, a particular set of parameters that holds back the kind of transition that will help humanity into the doughnut. And what that has taught me through all of that work is we've got to redesign finance and we've got to redesign business. Now, if I take it back to Ethex, I think what Ethex is doing, and has done so successfully in such a savvy way, is it has looked and found the sort of social enterprises, the kind of community-based organizations that need that financing, that embody a different paradigm at their very heart. And it has shaped its financial instruments accordingly. And I can't tell you how rare this is in the world of business and in the world of finance. There aren't that many Ethexes around. There aren't that many organizations that have been set up to ask themselves, how do I shape the financing to make it work for these mission-led, impact-oriented enterprises? Usually it's the other way around. How do they shape themselves to meet the needs of finance? And that paradigm shift is potentially disruptive to the whole economic debate and the whole economic arguments. So I'll end by also noticing that when I look at the story of Ethex, one thing I noticed was it's not something that highlights a particular individual or a particular ego. And the story of Ethex
is a story of collective action. And that itself is rare, even in the social enterprise movement, where you see a lot of stories based on very specific individuals. The fact that this isn't underlined, I think, tells a story about the ethos and the way it works. And I think it's a model that others are inspired from as well. So thank you. 10 years of impact is definitely something worth celebrating.
Thank you, Erinch, who said some very kind words about us actually on LinkedIn, which I might actually share in a bit, because it's hard to talk about your own organisation and blow your own trumpet sometimes. It's even better when someone else does it for you, so I might read that out. But first, let's just hear from Hugh, who's just going to give us a recap of his view of the 10 years. And yeah, over to you, Hugh.
Thanks, Lisa. It's always interesting when you look back, isn't it? And I realised when I was thinking this through, I joined Ethex as a non-executive director in 2016, and I joined an organisation which is well formed and doing really exciting things. And now here we are, fast forward to 2024, and I've been there for the majority of Ethex's life. But you know, under Jamie's foundership, it was already really going great guns 3 years in. And it was exciting when I joined to see that we were already growing out from renewable energy and beginning to look at things like social housing and all sorts of other community initiatives. And that actually turned out to be quite wise, because of course one of our big challenges, and all organisations have challenges, came along in sort of 2018, 2019, when the feed-in tariffs that had really boosted renewable energy, particularly at the community level, disappeared. So that was great foresight to be moving into these other areas. And then of course along came the pandemic. We've all had to completely adjust and do things differently. And like many other organisations, Ethex has become much more of a virtual organisation, and that's had its challenges and its benefits. But as we've worked through that under Lisa's leadership, and you know, Chris, I see a lot of you because you're leading on the finance side, and I can see there's a lot of the team past and present here tonight. But it's been great to see the way that Ethex has kept evolving and rising to the challenge. So I'm going to say thanks to one particular group of people and then tell a quick story about what they've achieved. And that's our funders. We've got 6 core funders who've really helped to drive Ethex over the 10 years. Esme Fairbairn, who really came in as the sort of founder organisation, along with Barrow Cadbury Trust, Tudor Trust, Lankelly Chase, Friends Provident Foundation, and then Big Society Capital. And between them, they've invested or supported us in grant form with £1.2 million. Not an insignificant amount of money, but when you think of what Ethex has turned over in 10 years, it's impressive what that has created. And actually 1.2, let's have another 1-2 number, 120, which you probably all know already. 120 million is the amount of funds that have been raised for projects around the country through Ethex, and what an amazing multiplier. 100 times the investment that's come in terms of the funding that's been generated. And there are other multipliers as well, just in terms of the renewable, the money that's been fed back into the community from renewable tariffs. That's 60 million. So it keeps growing. And all of that done by another 1-2 number, 12 people. A lot of people think Ethex has many employees. It's in fact a group of some working part-time, some working more than full-time, but 12 people. And it's great to see many more than 12 here tonight who have worked with Ethex, because of course that evolves as well. So thank you all. Thank you to the funders. Thank you to the team. And then of course Lisa mentioned the investors, and we've got about roughly 20,000 dedicated investors who've put money into these projects over the years and given us those 120 million reasons to celebrate it. So we're all part of it. We should all feel proud maybe it's time for another round of applause or a cheer. So come on, hey, well done all of it. And we're preparing for our next phase. So we met with our funders earlier this week to talk about our plans, and we're looking forward to sharing those with you over the next few months. But now it's time for Lisa.
I said I was going to read something out, and it just sort of sets the context, I think. And I want the team to hear it, but I'd also like, some of those people who, work with us to hear it as well, because I think it really sort of is a wonderful thing. So, sorry about this, Erinch, I'm going to embarrass you. There are few organisations I respect more than Ethex. They help community-owned and other social impact enterprises access finance. They are themselves a non-profit with purpose fully locked in, and they're savvy and practical. They do the hard work of actually channeling finance where it otherwise wouldn't go, all while fostering a narrative shift in the deep design of business and finance. It's a privilege to help them celebrate 10 years of impact. They are the real deal. And thank you for that, because it certainly feels like we've put the work in. And, I think everybody hopefully is reaping the benefits of that. And let's just take a moment to just walk through some of the focus of Ethex. So we've taken this 10-year moment to actually just reflect on our mission and our vision and what our focus is. And our vision is to shift the investment paradigm so money becomes a force for good. It's razor sharp. We think it's a big vision, but we think it needs to be done. We generally focus on 3 areas: fighting climate change, building more resilient communities, and creating a fairer society. But what's interesting about these 3 strands is they are so interconnected. You can't look at one without the other. They are absolutely essential to what we do, the types of organisations that we support, and what we project out to the world. So having this opportunity to just renew our focus has been exceptionally helpful. And particularly thanks to Julie, because this has been a real labour of love as well, for creating this report. Please do download it and have a look. You've got some hashtag thingies on your seat, which you can get more information on the report. And then blooming from those 3 sectors, those 3 areas of focus, are the sectors that we support. So you will often see projects on the platform of 1 or 2 of these sectors. Sometimes, like now, you might see projects which represent all of these sectors all at once. So we have sustainable food and farming, sustainable transport, tech for good, renewable energy, affordable homes, health and well-being, ethical finance, and community assets. And this will evolve over time. Sometimes sectors become more important or less important depending on the needs of the communities and individuals. Ethical finance has become quite an important sector for us more recently with the cost of living crisis, with individuals who cannot access affordable credit, for small organisations who cannot get any money from traditional financial organisations to grow their businesses and become more resilient. We're helping to channel that finance to those organisations. There's a huge amount to do, and we hope that we can rise to the challenge to really grow our organisation, our investors, the investees that we can support in the next 10 years of our life. And these aren't just based in Oxford, although I will give a few Oxford examples in a minute, because we should do that, because we took the effort to come to Oxford to be together. So the organisations that we support are all around the country. These are just a few examples. We're in Cornwall. Bristol, London, Leeds, Edinburgh, the Scottish Highlands, and all around the country. So communities rising up, finding solutions to challenges and creating these projects, and social enterprises forming and growing and really bolstering the local communities, employing people and creating excellent case studies which can then be replicated all over the country. And that's what we really want to see. Many of the projects are in areas of deprivation. They provide potentially critical money for those communities, and money stays in that community, and that is all part of this virtuous circle. Just focusing in on a couple of the key sectors, as Hugh mentioned, community renewable energy has been enormously important to us over the past 10 years. And, probably about 75% of all funding that has been raised from investors has gone into community renewable projects. This has created enormous community benefit, with over 60 million over the lifetime of those projects, saving nearly 1 million tonnes of CO2 over the lifetime of the projects. And that's really an extraordinary number, and it's the likes of Saskia's here from Low Carbon Hub. Nearly £10 million has been raised to do amazing projects in and around Oxford in community energy. Affordable homes for all. That might be helping people who have long-term unemployment, long-term addiction, alcohol or drug challenges. It might be those people with learning disabilities. It might be building homes which are community-owned organisations that can be replicated all over the country. And we've got some brilliant examples of Oxford Community Land Trust and Hook Norton CLT that we've been supporting, and we hope to see many more of those. Just a little snapshot of some of the other sectors and some good examples. Tech for good, what on earth is that? Well, it's become quite interesting that technology solutions can sometimes create real innovation. Organisations like, Greater Change, in Oxford, it was born out of Oxford Uni actually, that is helping to provide a platform that connects individuals with helping homeless people. Really important. Social impact lenders, as we mentioned, this is a growing focus. There's such a demand for affordable capital, and we're helping to provide some of that. Sustainable transport, Pedal and Post here in Oxford. That's a really great example. Easy Charge, you see those chargers around Oxford community as well. Vital community assets, Flows, the place in the park. UPP, the Picture Palace, all supported through your money and people like you. Sustainable food and farming, well, I hope we have something that we can support in Oxford. It's a gap at the moment, let's make sure we try and fill it. Health and Wellbeing, Project PT, live on the platform at the moment. It is an absolute joy to support these Oxford-based organisations and the others further around the country. And to finish my rallying cry, well, really, we've all got to step up, haven't we? Because we want to do more. So if you're an individual, what can you do? You can go and seek out more information. You can check out MoneyMovers, of which Emma is an ambassador, a programme that was supported by Friends of the Earth to actually get people to shift their mindset and think about taking action with their money. Good with Money, a really interesting and important website that highlights all of your ethical options. And we'll come back to this in a minute because so few people actually understand what ethical finance options are available to them. Are you an organisation that needs finance? Or are you an organisation that can provide match funding? We welcome you with open arms. Amplification partner. Well, one of the key things that we find is that when people find us, they say, "This is brilliant. Why have we never heard of you before?" Well, being a relatively small organisation, it's quite hard sometimes to get your voice heard in the mass market. We need to do more of that, and we need help to do that. So please do come and speak to us if you can help. Funders, well, Hugh's already covered that one. We always will speak to funders. Who won't? We love them. And yes, if you're a social enterprise, come and talk to us as well. We want to support more and do more. So, without further ado, I'm going to move to a short panel discussion, if I may, to ask some questions of the panel, to get you to ask questions of us, which you may do, and then we can go and mingle again. So, moving swiftly on. So let's talk first of all about challenges. What do we think are the main challenges to the sector growing at the moment? Is that a problem with the organisations, or is it we're seeing a lack of investors? So, Erinch, I'll come to you first.
I mean, it's a bit of a mix of, I think, both of those and others. When I speak to entrepreneurs that want to get an impact business off the ground, whether it's technically a social enterprise or a community-owned business or something else, what I realize is that they often feel like they have to fall into the straitjacket of venture capital. That if you're a startup, that's the way you get money. That's what society celebrates. That's what everyone says is the great sort of heropreneur. You find venture capital, you try to have some sort of exponential growth, but most of the businesses in the world actually aren't fit for venture capital. They're not going to grow exponentially. They don't have some sort of technology that's going to supercharge them, and they end up being sort of warped into something else. So all of these sort of incubators and startup, labs that have popped up around the world, some as part of universities, some elsewhere, where a lot of the businesses are born, businesses of the future, businesses that now dominate our economy. I mean, 20 years ago, that's where a lot of them came through the incubator programs and accelerators. They're channeling businesses into a very particular type of growth trajectory, which is what venture capital demands of it. And when you realize there's so many diverse ways you can structure financing and enable entrepreneurs to develop and grow their businesses, you realize there's a disservice to them because the ecosystem isn't getting the right information. And as a result, you end up meeting some of these people 10 years down the line, and they're full of regret. They started off with these mission-led enterprises, and they're saying, well, in order to get the venture capital, there was a term sheet that came across, and I didn't know I could negotiate anything, and I ended up, having my business completely warped into something it never was meant to be. And it's there's some sort of semblance of a mission-led brand that's hung on to it, but really it's sort of a hollow shell of itself. So I think a big part of it is a sense of innovation of, look, we can do finance differently. There's a lot of, Silicon Valley types that are going to talk about venture capital, but hey, actually the interesting stuff is what you guys are doing, what sort of the impact first end of that impact investing spectrum is doing, and all the different diverse ways of structuring equity and debt to get the right kind of financing for businesses. And I think if we can get the sense of excitement around those diverse models, we can start to unlock some energy, we can start to get a bit more momentum towards them.
But there's a bit of a disconnect, isn't there? Because innovative finance models means probably not a lot to an individual investor. So there's a bit of a gap to bridge, isn't there? So Emma, from your work with MoneyMovers, what do you see as the main challenges from individuals who are looking for ethical finance options?
I think there is a huge gap between the intention and the desire to do something good and the knowledge of things being out there. If I can put on my ambassador hat for a moment and talk about how awesome Money Movers is. If you've not heard of it before, this is something that started as a Friends of the Earth Experiments team project. And they basically wanted to identify particular groups of people that would be able to help each other to move their investments from things that effectively power the fossil fuel industry and to shift those investments into ethical things. And this grew into the Money Movers project because they identified that women, they did lots of research, and women had much more urgency, a sense of urgency about needing to invest in better things. And also women were far more likely to be actually interested in what they were investing in and how ethical that was. Sorry to the chaps in the audience, but that's how it came out in the research. So what they've done is they're now collaborating with Huddlecraft, and this is a peer support model, and they basically train people who are hosts, and they lead very small groups, and we're talking 5 to 6 women and people of marginalised genders to get together and to look at their finances and to just support each other in shifting them from where they are now, perhaps a bank that is doing despicable things, to a bank that is not doing as despicable things or something else entirely. The thing that's really exciting about this is that the pilot project had 300 women take part. They shifted £1.9 million away from, okay, I'm going to go back into author mode, evil, and the perpetuation of evil to much better things, lovely, splendid, let's do more of that, thank you very much. 300 women. And so now they're scaling this up, and their aim is to make it 300,000 women globally to shift billions. And I literally, my hairs are standing on end. I was so excited when I found out about this, and I trained as a host. And it's just one of those things where one of the important things about energizing women, because people say, well, why women and why people of marginalized genders? It's because we're usually traditionally shut out of finance, and there are 16% of financial advisors in the UK are women. And all of the kind of the marketing, all of the messaging is very much along patriarchal lines. And so lots of women really don't actually know what their options are. And the peer support model isn't about training people. You can't do that because there are very strict rules about who can give financial advice in this country. It's about literally getting people together and saying, okay, right, the first thing we're going to do is talk about how we feel about money, because it's terrifying. You start with taking an object that represents your relationship to money with you, to talk about it within the group, and you create this safe space, and it's a beautiful thing. Mine was a cactus because I'm a creative, I'm an author, so it endures drought, long periods of drought, and then a little bit of money, a very small amount of money, lots of drought. And also, when I have to talk about money, I get really spiky because it's terrifying. So it was perfect. So people actually start to open up about these things. And you have women who don't even know how to log into their pension accounts because their husband deals with it. And we have women who are reaching retirement age with, on average, £145,000 less in their pension funds. So that's why it's so important to mobilise, in particular, that demographic of people, not only because they actually are more likely to care and be ethical in their investments, but also because it's really important that they get involved and start to invest actively to grow that pot as well. Sorry, I've gone on far too long. I'm very passionate about this. It's great. You should check it out.
I love passion. This is all. So we recently did a survey, actually. When we were launching the report, we were told we need a hook. Okay, fine. We'll go out and we'll survey some people, and we will find out what are their views on things. So one of the stats that came back was, how aware are you of ethical options for your finance? And only 6% said they were very aware, which isn't absolutely tiny amount. So obviously there needs to be more to communicate and talk about what the options are. But Hugh, I'm going to come sideways to you now because your background is in communication. Mm-hmm. There's also quite a lot of greenwash out in the market as well. So how do we break through and talk about things in a genuine way without it just being noise and greenwash?
Yeah. I think, I don't know how many people you've all had this experience. We just changed, my wife and I just changed our financial advisor, and we said we must have more, if not everything, in more ethical funds. And I checked one of my ethical funds and found out that it had Shell, Vodafone, HSBC in it. How? And I'm a big fan of Share Action and Catherine Howarth and what she does to interrogate organisations like those and force them in a better direction. I suppose I did a talk on ethical business a few weeks ago, and I tried to encourage everyone in the audience. And is there anyone here who is an analyst? Well, you're a sort of analyst, aren't you? Really? Any analysts of business, financial analysts, or other sorts of analysts? Time to bring out the analyst in you, because we is the word that we always hear. We need to get more greenwashing got rid of. But I've always been taught in work, we doesn't get you anywhere, it's I. So I am trying to be more analytical. I encourage you to be more analytical, and there is help on the way. You'll know that particularly the EU has been very strong on regulation that tightens and makes it harder for greenwashing to happen. But I'm sure we've all worked in companies where it's very tempting to slip something through, and your good side is telling you to advise your CEO or your finance director that this is really not a good thing to be doing, but there are others who are going, well, just we can get away with that. And it's I that needs to stand up and say, this is wrong. We can't, we shouldn't get away with this. Both as an employee, and it's a top-down thing. So there's quite a few top-downs in the room, I'm sure, who've got the opportunity to have direct influence on how things are reported. But then it's I as an individual who has to follow the lead of the women and Emma that Emma's working with, and be brave and call organisations out and move our money into good places.
Are there any questions from the audience? Does anyone have questions? Jamie, of course you do.
Right back to the beginning.
No, we're at the back. No, I spent a lot of my career trying to introduce ethics into a range of different sectors. What is it for property to be ethical, for finance to be ethical, for chocolate industry to be ethical? And I've always sort of felt like I had to ask that question of myself. And what you're trying to do is sort of crack those sectors open. By cracking them open, that's how the light gets in, as Leonard Cohen would say. And then my hope had always been that by doing that, we would somehow we would demonstrate that it is possible to make money and do good at the same time. And that would have a ripple effect across the whole of that sector. And it would change the sort of basis and raise the standard for them where they had to become more ethical. And I wonder whether you thought two things. One, if that is true, or that was just folly on my part. Do you see that happening? And where would you see is the next sector that you'd like to crack open?
Erinch, do you want to speak to that first?
I mean, yeah, I've spent a lot of my career jumping on one side or the other. I mean, not as deep as you, Jamie, but jumping on one side or another of that question of, is it possible to do good and do well? Are there trade-offs? Are there tensions between maximum financial returns and social and ecological benefits? And what I found is that there are times when they're aligned, and there are times when there are trade-offs. And when we look at all the things that are now needed in the world in terms of the kind of urgent transition we need of entire sectors. Like fast fashion just has to transition now.
Yes, oh my God, yes.
But if we look at, for instance, the circular economy. So who here has heard of the circular economy? It's different to the donut, but basically everyone. Okay, I won't, teach you all how to suck eggs then around the circular economy. But the circular economy, which is a foundation that does research on it, does an annual report called the Circular Gap Report. And this year's report showed that circularity is on the decline. It's been on decline for several years now in a row. And the last 5 years, we have used the same amount of materials as the entire 20th century combined. So when we look at the rhetoric of sustainability, the last 20 years has been, win-win euphoria. We can do good by doing well. All the big companies have proclaimed this, that there aren't trade-offs. ESG is saying this, by using mostly, single materiality, which basically means how do you make more money by doing good. All of this has amounted to the net things getting worse, and that transition's not happening. And BP and Shell are making higher returns and higher dividends. Private equity is at all-time highs in terms of returns. There's something broken when people can just cherry pick the good that they do and avoid the transitionary things that are maybe going to require lower returns for a while and tolerate lower returns, or ones that you're going to need to be much more patient over the longer term in order to ride out that transition and the business is transformed into something else. So I think the answer is there are decent and good returns, as well as being able to facilitate the kind of ethical decision making in business. But if you want maximum returns, unfortunately, it's the big private equity firms that have made really bumper returns. It's the big venture capital firms who have, found the unicorns and squeezed startups dry to get them to grow as fast as possible and extract as quickly as possible. It's the fossil fuel giants that have produced amazing high returns. So unfortunately, I think there are trade-offs there, and there are tensions between the two. But I think the goal shouldn't be, how do I get maximum returns by doing good? It should be, how do I get sufficient returns while helping the kind of organizations that we need in our economy?
Could I add to that? So something that, I don't know if other people read it, there was a recent Guardian article about landlords and how 1 in 21 people in the UK is a landlord. I had to have a cup of tea after I read that. I was like, what? They were like, I have not fact checked this. I'd like to think that they might have done that. But apparently there are 4 times many more landlords than there are teachers. And I just want to get off the planet immediately when I think about this. And some of the things that I've been thinking about in terms of I'm thinking about my parents' generation and how so many of them think that the only way to create any kind of nest egg for their retirement is to buy a house, a buy-to-let mortgage, and to rent it so that eventually that house will have been paid off and then they will have a nest egg. And it makes perfect sense in terms of a desperate need to survive, which is what we're all trapped in late-stage capitalism, right? We're all terrified because the only thing that is between us and destitution is making some money. And I had this thought of, what if that generation of people who have the money to do that kind of thing just didn't anymore and shifted to ethical investment and had a 6% return forever? Rolling throughout their life, making everything better around them, and then they would have kids and grandchildren who could actually afford to live in houses because they won't all be rented. I'm going to rant and I'm going to stop myself now because I'm very angry and passionate about this too. But it's that kind of shift in terms of what is the accepted norm in society, and to push against that and say, actually, can we just take a step back and go, no? Can we just not? I am a science fiction author, so forgive me. I do not spend much time in the real world as much as possible. But it just seems that there are some really fundamental shifts, just getting rid of buy-to-let mortgages, making it, tax relief for people who invest in ethical businesses, just those two little levers, you know.
I mean, obviously the potential, I'll come to a question in a minute. Brilliant. Oh, there's two questions. Okay. You know, there may well be a new government this year. And, you know, I think there are a lot of opportunities that could bring in terms of channeling more money and opportunities to communities to take charge of their, you know, future and have more assets owned by communities. So to your point about what would we like to crack open, actually in a way it's not necessarily a sector, although interestingly we do have a circular economy project coming up soon. Watch this space, because it's really interesting. Hasn't passed DD yet, so but actually it's having conversations with councils and cities about their net zero strategies and how to embed community in those solutions, because I think that could encompass quite a number of different sectors actually, but it needs to be joined up and the community needs to be at the heart of it and having a real say. And a risk, I think, is that actually solutions are done too, instead of them being really creative and hand-in-hand solutions. So I think that's really an interesting place to watch and for us to try and engage with as much as possible. Yes, question. Do we need a mic? Shall I go?
I wanted to make, you'll probably hear me. I wanted to mention that, can you hear me?
Here we go.
Yeah, I think Thank you. I wanted to mention that.
Is that on?
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, I'll try again. Thanks for your patience. I wanted to mention this big thing called loneliness, and the hidden disease that's all over the place. If I look down my street, which I've managed at a pinch to get to know everybody a little bit, because that's what my profession has been, communities and thinking and feelings and all that stuff. But in the street, there isn't anybody I know whose loneliness was not exacerbated enormously by COVID. But the thing was, the loneliness, the level of street loneliness was already huge. It wasn't, it wasn't caused by COVID. It was already there. This is to do with the social history of the area in which the young people are being raised up in an estate, and then they moved off because they got an education. And these are very big social dynamics that somehow don't get addressed. The education gets wasted, a lot of it, and the big thing that's important to kids, which is my mates and where am I going to play, and the big thing for grown-ups, which is where are my mates and where am I going to play. These are secondary. These are maybe squashed a little bit to the side. And what we know from the World Health Organization research of a while ago, what we know is that there are seven aspects for healthy human beings, and if you miss any of them out, it won't work. Thank you.
Maybe I could just try and address that in some way in some of the great work that some of the organisations we support do, like Flows, the place in the park, which is not just a community asset, but a meeting place and a hub for people to go to stay warm, to communicate with each other, and to find a friendly face. And I think more and more communities are stepping up to provide those types of services and those assets in the community.
And
where
that's been accomplished. Thank you for your part in it. That's been accomplished.
Yeah.
Literally in less than the last 20 years.
Yeah, yeah,
Since I moved to Oxford.
yeah. But we need more of those, don't we? Yes, and we need more projects like Project PT, who are, you know, working on health and well-being and bringing people together and providing access to those types of services that they wouldn't necessarily otherwise be accessing, right? I think.
It's where things link into.
Exactly. There's another question over here, and then I think we'll go and have another
Thanks.
drink.
I would totally agree with the need for big picture changes, tax relief on all sorts of ways. But I'd just like to come back to the personal. I'm sure I'm not the only person in this liberalish, leftish community of people here in Oxford who has sat around a dinner table or a pub table with their friends and told them about the investment I just made through Ethex. And they've all said, wow, that's brilliant. Why didn't I know about that? And I've WhatsApped them the web link and blah, blah, blah. And 3 months later, they've done nothing. They're aware, they're engaged, but they're not acting. And I suspect there's a lot of that around. How could Ethex help people like me get those people over the line? Would it be possible, for instance, to take a city like Oxford and say, let's do ethical investment. Let's do money movers at a city level with some local branding.
Can I?
Yeah, Emma's raring to go.
Sorry. This is where the peer support model that MoneyMovers uses is a really good, I think, transferable model to what you're talking about. So the whole idea is that you have 3 sessions. So a host will get together 5 or 6 people and you set 3 sessions together. Each session is only an hour or 2 long. And that host leads the discussion. And then you, at the end of that first meeting, you have things that everybody says, right, this week I'm going to go and do this. And they have an action thing that they need to take, a personal thing. And then you meet up again and you see how everyone's getting on. If there are any issues, you discuss it as a group, you get support from each other. Could that not be something that could be ported over to an Ethex thing where you have hosts who are people like you who have done it already and have seen how easy it is and how well it works, and that you just pick 5, 6 friends and you have those 3 sessions and kind of also blend it in with moving money ethically. You know, it's all hand in hand, right? So it's because when people hear something, hear an idea, they go off and they get distracted by life. So you need to have somebody. That's why the hosting model works, because you have somebody who is driving it. And it's hard because people are busy and people are distracted. But if you keep bringing people back and like luring them in with the temptations of dinner and nice wine or whatever, or a movie afterwards, and then you're building that community as well. You're forging friendships and strengthening friendships, and that's been the other effect of the MoneyMovers model as well.
I think so. We did try actually many moons ago a kitchen table group, and so a few of us gathered around a kitchen table to talk about what were the projects on the platform and what questions people might have about those, and you know, what were their own financial circumstances, and sharing that information. It's quite hard to do actually, because you know, for everyone to feel in a safe space where they can have those conversations, not feel like someone's dominating the conversation or is much more well-educated or much more financially savvy than they are. And I think the peer model is really interesting, and Ethex does need to get more people together more often and do exactly what we're doing tonight, you see I'm going to round up now. Because by talking together and coming together, then we can hold each other to account, can't we? And that's what we need to do. And the more that we can try and help you, then hopefully we'll continue this blossoming of Ethex and the social enterprises and communities that we support. But perhaps I can also talk to you about that separately as well. So thank you, everyone. I think we've got another question. Oh, yes, okay, one more question.
Yes, I can just shout if you like.
I've got a microphone. Let's show you. Just talk very closely to it.
Thank you. A bit of a wacky question, but would a way of connecting among not just this, what often is called an echo bubble, but the world beyond that, maybe use other ways of communication like YouTube. I think investing in a YouTuber that invites every successful initiative like Floor's Place and other experts to come and talk, and comedians and writers and poets and so on, a representation of the real world, but in a parallel world, so that other people buy into a different reality that they can access to without feeling scared of not being eco warriors. I don't know.
Yes.
Just a question.
Yeah, we need to normalise it, don't we?
Yeah.
And we do something called the Cuppa Club, which is a webinar of hosting the businesses and meeting the businesses and having an opportunity to ask them questions, which was really successful during COVID. And then people got really busy again. How dare they? And so it has become slightly harder to keep that momentum and to attract people and for people to make time. But what we do is we record them, we shorten them, and then we put them out there for everyone. So we definitely need to do more of that, and we'll take note of trying to make our voice a bit louder and to bring our shoulders up above the crowd a bit more so that we can help to grow this movement. So if I may, just thank the panellists for being brilliant and for the audience for contributing and being brilliant. And if everyone would like to mingle and go and have another drink, please do. We'd love to chat to you some more. Thank you very much for coming.
So my name's Emma Newman. I'm an author, podcaster and audiobook narrator. So the reason it's really important for women in particular, women and marginalised genders, groups of people to get together and start to talk about money and to take action in terms of where they invest that money. The reason it's so important for women in particular is twofold. One is because women are far more likely to care about what that money is doing, whether the investments they're making are ethical. And also, they have a much greater sense of urgency about something needing to be done. And that comes out of research that was carried out by Friends of the Earth when they were initially developing the MoneyMovers project. The other reason it's really important is because women are significantly disadvantaged in the financial arena. Only 16% of financial advisors in the UK are women, and all of the messaging and just basically the attitude towards finances and financial management is very patriarchal. There are many, many women in several generations who leave all of their financial arrangements to their husbands. And they also are likely to end up with a much smaller pension pot at the end of their working life than men. So their money has to work even harder. So if women can get together and help each other and support each other to learn about how they can invest ethically and also how they can increase their own financial well-being for the future, brilliant. That's what we need. So I think changing the way that we spend money, how we invest, is one of those things which is like casting a really big stone into a vast pond, and the ripple effect is incredible. So when people choose to invest in community projects or small ethical businesses, what we find is that that money stays within the community. For the Imagining Tomorrow podcast, I interviewed this amazing community in Wales, the Cwm Arian Renewable Energy Project. And they managed to fund a £1.3 million wind turbine. It took them 14 years to do this. Now, the energy that's generated by that wind turbine, they can't use because there are rules set by government that energy has to go to the grid. But they're earning money through that, and that money is staying in the community. They've used it to build a hub where they can have training sessions. They have a community orchard. They've been doing energy assessments for the community, and they have money within the community to do that. So when you have people who invest ethically, they're not just doing one thing to help one project. It always starts a process and builds something bigger. And keeping that money in the community is absolutely crucial for financial well-being, for community resilience, and also these projects knit communities together. It combats loneliness. It gives people faith and confidence in each other again, because the future getting better has to be people-centered, driven by communities, because they know what they need. And somebody from a government in London, hundreds of miles away, they don't know what the community needs, but people do. So if you can just help them to get started, it starts something beautiful that just grows and grows and grows.
Well, I really like the idea of just being able to support a project that's local or not local, but doing something that I think is really valuable. And I love it. I love the fact that it's so direct. You learn about the project. You can see what impact it makes. Yep. So it works for me. I think lots of people have no idea that ethics exists or that you can do small-scale investing in this way. So I think just talking to people and telling them what I do helps. I think being in Oxford helps because ethics is here, but it's far wider than Oxford. It's difficult. People aren't very easy about talking about money, but each time you talk to somebody, you're spreading the word.
I found it an absolutely brilliant opportunity to invest in ethics instead of moaning about all the problems that go on in the world, is to be able to do something about it, even in a small way, by putting my money where my mouth is. And particularly, I started off by investing in wind farms, one of the first ones, I think, and I saw that it actually produced quite a good return. And then I just got completely hooked on investing in things that ethics suggested. So I'm just very happy about ethics. Well, I think I would want more people to know about ethics, to understand what it actually represents, and the way in which it offers us an opportunity, as I said, to stop moaning about the state of the world or being frightened about climate change or all the other terrible things which are going on, and to do make a very small contribution to changing all of that, just to make them aware that they can be part of a force for good.
My name is Erinch Sahan. I'm the Business and Enterprise Lead at Doughnut Economics Action Lab. The way direct investing through Ethex contributes to a fairer and more equitable economy is that it unlocks finance and funding for enterprises that are built for impact. Enterprises that are often community owned, or they're social enterprises, ones that from the very inception were designed to create benefits for their communities, for the local environment, And they're the very enterprises that need finance. They're the ones that are missing out on financing. The more we can channel finance into them, we make them into successes, the more we transform local societies and economies, and the more others start to crowd in, other enterprises, other entrepreneurs, other financiers. So this is the beginning of a broader movement, a broader change that's happening. Small investments in grassroots organizations is where the real impact is. They're the ones that are at the heart of their communities. They're the ones that are building what communities need. They're the organizations that are bringing people in and co-creating them. Those societies where everyone's involved, everyone has got some involvement in the projects. They're the ones that we need to see up and going. And as a result, we get to have a whole magnitude, a multitude, a diversity of organizations, enterprises that get off the ground. And that diversity, all those unique types of organizations that are community-based, they're the ones we need to see financed and funded, and that's what you can unlock.
I'm enormously proud of Ethex and everything that has been achieved. We really have put the work in, and we support organisations all over the UK to do brilliant projects, from community renewable energy to affordable homes for all. This is the time where individuals can come together. We don't have to wait for government. We can really show enormous action and positive impact by supporting all of these organisations and coming together to support them. We need to amplify our voice. We need to stand up and be heard. We need to put our shoulders above the crowd. Because whenever people come to us and say, "This is brilliant, why haven't I heard about you before?" We're so surprised, but we need to really project our voice so that everyone knows about Ethex.